Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you happen to be around the world. Welcome to another office hours here on hosting.com's Agency Success. My name is Nathan Ingram, and I am the host here, the agency trainer here at hosting.com. So glad you're with us for this office hours where you get to ask whatever question you would like to ask. We currently have, it looks like, 3 questions in the queue. So if you'd like to ask a question, the link is waiting on you in the chat, and I would invite you to do so. In the meantime, we will begin as we usually do with our weekly brief. If you'd like to download this slide deck, it is waiting on you on the chat as well. Just a few things to talk about. It's been kind of a slow news week, but a few things have popped up that I think are interesting to take note of. The first one is that the roadmap for WordPress 7.1 has been released, and McCarthy will be the lead for this next release of WordPress. The target date is August the 19th, which is the final day of WordCamp US in a very cool Phoenix, Arizona in August. So the roadmap is going to focus on a guidelines feature for style for your WordPress site to define voice, tone, editorial rules that will connect into AI tooling. So if you think about it this way, it's kind of like, you can set up your favorite AI tool with some shared instructions across all of the chats that inform the AI tool about you and what you're doing and what you like, that sort of thing. This is going to be similar to that, but for each WordPress install, which is kind of neat. We'll have to see how that actually fleshes out. Also, there's going to be a lot of the rendering of graphics is going to be done in the browser rather than on your server. So when you go to upload something into the media library, that'll be done on your browser rather than using the resources on the server. So that's a nice little update. I think that's good across the board. There's a lot more processing power available for that little task of converting an image right there in your browser using your computer hardware than passing that up to the server. So that's pretty good. It's also going to make things like HEIC conversion, which is an excellent format that's used for cameras and so forth. But sometimes it gets goofy when you try to put that in WordPress. All that's going to be handled locally, which is good. They're also going to be deprecating the classic block, which I'll talk about here in just a minute. Not the classic editor, but the classic block. The big question mark is still real-time collaboration. And that's, I'll have another slide about that here in just a minute. It's still a big question mark as to how that's going to land in core. Now, one of the big things that I just mentioned is that WordPress 7.1 is going to deprecate the classic block. Now, you've probably seen this before when maybe you've moved from a site that was all in the classic editor over to blocks, and then there's that one it's basically tiny MCE in a block that you can then convert to multiple blocks if you want to. But this classic block is going to be removed from the inserter. Now, that doesn't mean that if you still convert, you'll still be able to convert a site from, the classic editor into Gutenberg. That's fine, but you won't be able to add a classic block like you do now. And honestly, that just makes sense. I don't really know anyone who is working with blocks that actually adds a working classic block to the block editor on a page or a post. So that's a good move, I think, and that'll be part of WordPress 7.1. Now, just a note, again, this is not the classic editor plugin. So if you still have sites like we do in my agency that rely on the classic editor, you haven't flipped them over to blocks for whatever reason, this does not affect that. So the classic editor plugin is still not going anywhere. So that's a good thing. Now, you can note there, I'm seeing that Cindy says she has a couple of sites affected by the classic block. Well, just like anything else in WordPress, as soon as they remove something from core, there's going to be a filter to add it back. So core is going to remove the classic block from the inserter. The ones that are still on the page will always, they'll still exist there. But if you want to put actually the classic block back in the inserter to add a new block, you'll be able to do that with a little function right here, like a one-line function filter, or there'll probably be a plugin for this as well. So they're saying, though, just to be aware, this is still just a stopgap, that the full removal of the classic block might come as early as WordPress 7.2. So we shall see. All right. Yes. Big news here. Austin Gender has traced a single operator who spent 13 years shipping the same backdoor through WordPress.org plugins, many of them sold as security tools like WP Antivirus Site Protection, Byte Defense Security, Magex AI Bot Defender, and WP Advanced Math CAPTCHA. All of those sites actually had a backdoor, and that's not great. So he's documented 44 plugins across 19 accounts. The plugins team has actually found more. They've identified 56 plugins across 27 WordPress accounts that has this backdoor called siteguarding_tools.php that grants full remote code execution. And if you go delete that file, it has a self-restoring routine. So that's not great. And it's good. It's a good thing that these folks are out there and finding these exploits. Well, this is interesting news that just came out a couple of days ago. If you're still using LastPass, I have more bad news for you. They've had another data breach, another one. So my hope for you is that you moved away from LastPass a few years ago when they have had the massive data breach that affected so many people and really exposed some what I would call ineffective encryption techniques that people just assumed were covered. Anyhow, I moved away from LastPass at that point, but I know some folks have lingered. They've actually had another data breach related to one of their vendor partners. So LastPass says attackers stole customer names, phone numbers, email addresses, physical addresses, support case records, and sales data. Through a breach at Clue, a market research partner. The encrypted password vaults in LastPass's own infrastructure weren't touched, but they did have another leak of customer information. So that is not great news if you're still on LastPass. Another little security issue affecting a major WordPress theme/plugin. The Avada builder has a flaw in it that puts a million sites at risk of takeover. So if you are running a site that uses Avada, you're going to want to make sure you're up to date to the latest version. It was a 9.1 severity score. We don't see a lot of those. This is a big deal. So the exploit needs a published if you have an Avada form with a database entry storage enabled, that allows attackers to exploit the site. So you want to make sure you are at least at 3.15.4 on Avada. They did drop that a couple weeks ago. So that released on June the 2nd. So hopefully you've updated stuff since then. But just double check if you have any Avada sites, you want to make sure you're up to date with the latest version of the theme and plugin. One more little thing, and I'm super excited about this. I've actually been talking to the people at Dynamic 000 about Nova Mira and building an expertise for Beaver Builder, and they dropped that just a couple of days ago. Nova Mira Pro 1.4 released on the 23rd adds a Beaver Builder specialization so that your AI agent can build in actual Beaver Builder modules. Now, the Beaver Builder team some time back released a nice AI tool that builds in their kind of next generation block module, which is cool, but it's a little more difficult, especially if you have less technical clients that have been editing their site in Beaver Builder all along. It's going to be it's a big change for them. This tool, this expertise, actually builds in core Beaver Builder blocks. And I will tell you, I built a homepage from an HTML rendering earlier yesterday, and it worked pretty well. Right out of the box. Now, we've got some other framework around that that helps it to build things with Claude, but it built the page in actual Beaver Builder blocks. So that's pretty darn cool. It does understand what Beaver Themer is and it will wire up dynamic fields and so forth. So pretty neat. Sherry's asking, could you give it an Illustrator layout? I don't know. It'd be worth trying. In our process, we're building flat HTML mockups now and pushing those out to the page builder. So pretty good stuff. Nova Mira just continues to get better. It's a tool I invested in, and I strongly recommend it. They're doing great work. All right, a couple of things coming up here at hosting.com. We had a great webinar on Tuesday. I heard from several of you after the fact about this, that you appreciated the content audit and how really in more of a meta picture, how do you take an existing process in your agency and push that into AI to get good, consistent results? We demonstrated that on Tuesday with the content audit. If you missed that, we ought to have the replay up pretty soon for that. I have another live stream coming up in 2 weeks. So a week from this coming Tuesday, we'll be talking about MCPs and Rocket.net and the incredible power you can have when you connect your file-aware AI tool like Codex or Claude to an MCP, which lets you connect to an external service. Rocket.net several weeks ago released their MCP that allows you full access to your WordPress site, the file tree, the database, and the hosting architecture, which is really cool when you're trying to deal with speed issues or whatever. You can look at what the Cloudflare layers are doing, all from within that single MCP. So that is pretty cool stuff. All right, let's take a look at some questions now. Let me jump over to our list. If you have a question you'd like to ask, use the link that is in the chat waiting on you now. Looks like we currently have 3 questions in the list, so plenty of space, y'all, for questions today. You never disappoint with questions, so please get those in, and we will begin with Sue. 2 things from last week. ASE, which is Admin Site Enhancements plugin, has a checkbox to hide the version number in the header meta tag. I can't find it in Cadence Security anymore. A setting AI claims is there, just isn't. They must have removed it. They may have. I asked about some advanced settings, and they are in Security Settings Advanced, Enable Security Headers, and then expand the arrow. Those are the settings I was asking about. Should I generally use server settings? And if not, what? Okay, so this is what we're looking at here is Cadence Security, formerly Solid Security, formerly iTheme Security, formerly Better WP Security. So yeah, this is the security section in that plugin, and there are all of these headers. Now, here's what I'll tell you, Sue. Be careful with these, because doing this incorrectly, and you can start to cause problems for embeds like YouTube videos and things like that. So I actually don't have recommendations for you on this because I do a lot of this stuff at Cloudflare rather than Cadence Security, and I haven't really investigated these options. They are relatively new in Cadence Security. So I don't have a good option for you on this. It's the content type settings, or where you can get into trouble with embeds like YouTube or Vimeo videos. Yeah, so this is a great example of something to say, hey, Claude, let's take a look at this screenshot and what would be the best option to put in here for my site. I would recommend, though, Sue, that you do this at Cloudflare rather than in Cadence Security. Okay, lots of things in the chat. Let's see. You don't know what they do. So should you turn them off or select none? I would not use this in Cadence Security. I would do this at Cloudflare, and generally you can use all of their recommended options without a problem on Cloudflare. But yeah, like Stacy's saying, this is one of those things where you really have to turn things on and test, and it's all dependent on what's actually on your site. So you tried to ask Cadence support and got useless answers. Unfortunately, I'm not surprised at that. So this is the sort of thing where is it best to have security headers? Absolutely. Is it more secure? Yes. Is it a deal breaker? Probably not, honestly. Probably not. Let me get into, I'll show you the Cloudflare flavor of this. Let me get logged into Cloudflare. But yeah, unfortunately, this is not something where I can say just add this for every site and you're fine. These are things that just don't quite work that way. And now, of course, I'm getting a sign in error. Okay, here we go. Oh my goodness. All the things are giving me trouble today. Here we go. So let's take a quick look. All right. Where? Oh, I'm not in the domain. Well, where's security headers? Well, it's all going to be a difficult issue, isn't it? Let's see if they're under settings. We get to go find this in the UI. I actually built a little app that does all of our Cloudflare settings for us. And so I've forgotten where some of these things are now in the UI. And if somebody knows immediately where those security headers are, I would appreciate the tip. Feel free to drop that in the chat. Oh, is it maybe it's not security rules. Those are our skip rules and so forth. Well, folks, they're in Cloudflare somewhere. Set security headers. That's not what I want. You would think you could just search for security headers and there it would be, right? But it's not. Okay, let's ask AI. Oh, I don't want to. Do I got to create a token really? Oh, okay. Well, it looks like it's going to answer. I haven't used Cloudflare AI before. Let's see what it says. Goodness. Well, this is underwhelming. Okay. Yes, the user is in fact asking about security headers. My goodness. Okay. It's not even coming up under the specific ones. Isn't that interesting? That's what I want. These, yes. Where are they? Transform rules. So that's not what I would where I thought they would be. So let's look at rules. My goodness. Yes, here they are. They're under rules and settings. Okay, now why in the world? Because they're not called security headers, they're called response headers. But they still don't come up in the search. How crazy. So the powered by is this one is always safe to turn on. So that'll remove the powered by WordPress. And if you toggle on security headers, that I believe this setting is often safe enough, but you'll want to test something like a YouTube video just to be sure. These are generally going to be safe. This one should always be safe. It's odd that they don't. I thought this dropped down a setting that gave you more granular control over security headers, but either I dreamed that or they've moved it or gotten rid of it. Okay, that was a really long explanation that didn't really get us very far. But there we go. Sue, I don't think I helped you at all. All right. And on that wonderful note, let's move on to the next question from Tanya. Hey, Tanya. Okay. On your DMARC, set, go. Awesome. Can you explain DMARC to me like I just learned to say Dada? When I set up the RU something or other to send emails to the client, they get a ton of them and complain. How does one get around this whole email fiasco and monitor, etc.? Why does Google and Yahoo have to complicate things? Or is that my brain doing that? Sincerely, Tanya, who needs a demarcation. Tanya, you get the award for the most fun questions to read. I just got to say. Okay, so the RUA, which is basically the email every time something happens bad, like an email is rejected or whatever. It's just that should never go to a human. They're just too, they're dense to read. They don't make any sense. They're not really actionable. And so what you need is a service that collects those records. Now, what I would recommend for you is the best free option for all of this is simply Cloudflare. Now, let's see if they've moved all this stuff. Thankfully, not. So Cloudflare gives you DMARC management as part of the deal. And so you can simply go into Cloudflare, DMARC management, enable DMARC management, and it will add for you the record already. Now, I'll drop back a step and explain it. Now, this one's going to fail because it doesn't have a DKIM record. But what this is going to do is when it created this record, which you just referenced, we've got our DMARC record here, and it's got the RUA as a mail to this, whoever's email address. And so what you're saying, Tanya, is you were putting the client's email address there. And yeah, I'd get frustrated at that too, because I don't know what all those emails mean, and I'm supposed to know what I'm doing. So, yeah, let's drop back a step and we'll talk about what DMARC is and what this should be, and then how to connect it to a service like Cloudflare that is going to help you make sense of all of this. So DMARC is actually the third of a three-part step. So what you need first, and all of this is related to email validation. What you need first is an SPF record. Now, an SPF record is what is allowed, what servers are allowed to send mail on behalf of this domain name. So, for example, if you have Google Workspace, then you're going to add an SPF record that allows google.com or whatever to send email on behalf of your domain. That's what the SPF does. These services like MailChimp or Constant Contact or Google Workspace or you fill in the blank that can send email as you, they need to be in that SPF record. So SPF has to exist. Also, DKIM has to exist. Now, DKIM is basically an encryption key that says, okay, this domain is allowed to send email on my behalf. That's SPF. Now, this individual email was signed, sealed, and delivered by a server that's authenticated to actually send that email. So SPF is the domain. DKIM is the actual email that's being sent. Now, DMARC is, what do I do if either the SPF or the DKIM are not aligned? DMARC is basically an instruction set of what do I do when these two things aren't correct? Like if one or both of them are wrong, what do I do? That's your DMARC rule. And it's saying, okay, send it to this email address for an alert. And right here, it's saying, this is the action. P equals none means take no action but send a report. That's what this RUA reporting email address is this, right? So at minimum, I would usually say quarantine. How do you spell quarantine? Let's spell it correctly. All right. So P equals quarantine. What that does is it tells the server, like you send something to yahoo.com and the SPF and DKIM are not aligned. It's going to say, Yahoo, quarantine that email and send an email to this reporting address. And that reporting address is capturing all of these reports about misaligned emails. So you use none, and Stacy is correct here. You use none until, to make sure that your SPF is working. Now, if your SPF and your DKIM are already working, it's generally safe to go ahead and say quarantine. Google and Yahoo want, and I think Microsoft now as well, they want at least quarantine, not none. They'll start to dump it if you have none. So P equals quarantine. Now, what's going to happen here? We got the error because we don't have an SPF or a DKIM record. So DMARC's not going to work. But Cloudflare will start to, for free, collect those reports and give you a pretty simple dashboard if you're interested in those things. Tanya, where do quarantined emails go? They're probably in the spam folder of your recipient. Or if it's badly misaligned, or some ISPs will just delete them and they'll be gone. Sometimes they don't even make it to the spam folder. So you have to make sure your SPF and your DKIM are correct and set up correctly. And then you can test that email with a service like MX Tools. They'll allow you to test it and make sure your SPF and DMARC and DKIM work. And then your DMARC, you just set it up like we just saw. All right, does that make sense? Many alphabet soups here. I did do a whole live stream on this at some point, and it was all about this topic. Let me see if I can just quickly find what that was. Here is the handout for that very webinar, that very live stream, all about who stole my email. And in that live stream, I went through this whole thing. And that is also on the YouTube channel. So if you go to replays.myagencysuccess.com, you'll see the replay for that live stream. Okie dokie. Lots of alphabet soup in that answer. All right, next up is Ben B. And if you have a question you'd like to ask, we currently have 3 questions in the queue, so plenty of space still for more questions. We have a number of long-term clients we have never actually met in person. Isn't that funny? The thought is that a face-to-face visit could help reinvigorate those relationships and demonstrate genuine commitment. However, there is a nagging concern. The one client we did meet in person only came about because they were passing through the area on their travels and asked if we were available. We did not seek it out. They parted ways within 9 months of that meeting. It may have been coincidence, but it's made us question whether meeting in person somehow shifts the dynamic or removes a certain mystique that works out in our favor remotely. Is it better to let sleeping dogs lie and preserve those relationships exactly as they are? Or is there genuine value in seeking face-to-face contact with clients you have only ever worked with remotely? Isn't that a fun question? Ben, thanks for this one. Let me think about how to answer this question. I think I'll start from a meta perspective of, okay, the things that we do, generally speaking, and that we've done historically as web professionals are slowly being commoditized by AI tools. It's getting easier and easier for much less technical people to competently do a lot of the things that we as web professionals have always done and been relied upon to do. Does that make sense? And so because of that trend of commoditization, which is only heading that direction, it's not going backwards. Because of that trend of commoditization, we have to do something to not make ourselves a commodity. So for me, that's always been, it's not just about the thing we do, it's that you have absolute trust in my guidance and wisdom through the process. And so there's a thing, but there's a relationship built around the thing. So for me, it's always been based on trust and relationships with my clients. Um, so is it valuable then to have face-to-face meetings? Now, there's two kinds of face-to-face meetings. There's face-to-face over Zoom, and there's face-to-face in person sitting down over a cup of coffee. All I can do is speak from my own experience. The face-to-face meetings over Zoom, I think, are adequate. And I think it's good to have those frequently. Most of our clients now are not local to me. They're in other states around the country. That did not used to be the case. It used to be I would go and, sit in their office and whatever. That doesn't happen hardly at all anymore. Even my local clients, I'm having conversations over Zoom. They're comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with that. But we still have, they see my face. We have a conversation. And that's, to me, I think that checks the box to help continue that trust relationship. So in some ways, it's going to depend on the client. I actually had a face-to-face meeting with a client for the first time in, gosh, it was probably at least a year, maybe 2 years. A local business just around the corner over here, a manufacturing facility, and I went and met with them in person as a potential client. It was even funny. Like I walked in the office, I'm like, man, it's been a long time since I've done this in person, face to face, knocking on the door, but it was good. And this kind of client, which was a very blue collar manufacturing entity, they liked that face to face contact. And so that was a big selling point that I was able to just, head over there and have the meeting. Would Zoom have worked? Probably. This was better for them. So a lot of it's going to depend upon the client, but at the very least, have some sort of video conference where you're talking with a client on a regular basis. And that, that's true for most of our clients. Like we need to at least, have a check-in call a couple of times a year just to chat. How are things going? What are some of the needs you have? And oftentimes you can find that this is actually something that creates more business from you for that client. So I don't know. I just talked a lot. Ben, does that make sense what I'm saying? I don't know that actually in-person contact is necessary, but face-to-face contact is necessary. And what this does is it helps to instill that confidence that we're a real person and we understand and connect with them and we can help them navigate the waters of what the right technical decisions are for their business. All right. It's a great question. Class says, I almost never do in-person meetings anymore. Even in town, Zoom is quicker for all involved. I agree. That's, I go back and forth about this because I found, especially when I was meeting with this last client several weeks ago, I miss that. Like I miss sitting down around a table and having a good conversation with folks. But gosh, I do also enjoy not having to drive across town. So it's funny. Tanya has a client in Hawaii. I would like a client in Hawaii. Let's move next because yes, you can legally write that, write a trip off if the reason you're actually going to Hawaii is to meet with the client and not on vacation. I don't know how you'd prove that it was one or the other. Okay. Yeah, it all depends. Exactly, Alvin. All right. Next question is from Elizabeth. Folks, we just have one more question in the list. So if you've got a question you want to ask, burning into your mind, use that question, the link there in the chat to ask your question. All right. Elizabeth says, what are you using to build HTML mockups? And the answer is the same thing I'm using for everything else these days, which is Claude. Gosh, we're building everything in Claude now, and it's pretty darn cool, some of the things that we've just created. We built a process. It's a multi-step process that's too complicated to get into here. But it's a multi-step process where we build a flat HTML document, and that's what we're showing to customers now for design approval. We're building a homepage and an inner page from that, and from that, we'll build out to a page builder. Billy is asking, is it Claude Design? No, it's not. Claude. So there's nothing more. How's the right way for me to say this? Claude Design is super cool, and you should absolutely use it unless you built your own system in Claude that does all those things already and is hooked into other things that you do. So I've been building for the last year an internal system that has all of our processes in it that uses Claude to implement. Now, and you saw a picture of that, by the way, on Tuesday with the content audit live stream, where it's just a piece of the process that we're automating with Claude. And design is, to me, design is the hardest nut to crack in that. But I've got a process now that I'm pretty comfortable with. Do y'all want to see one? See one of these HTML mockups? I think I can pull one up for you, and I think it'll be okay to show. Hang on a minute. Oh, there it is. It's actually where it's supposed to be. Just a moment. Website. That's not it. Where is... So we're still wrangling over photography, but this is the local company that I mentioned that I just met with. And so these guys do gigantic fans for industrial purposes, like giant, like you can see the size of these things, right? And so, yeah, we took their, let me pull up their, where is their brochure they gave us? We took some design motif from their brochure. For example, the nice navy color we pulled from the brochure, and we built this site. Now, what is this? This is an index.html that has all of the CSS built into it. It's a single HTML file. Yes, Claude designed this too. Claude built this. Now, I didn't say, go build this site. That, the actual design build is like way down the line of the process where we did competitive research and looked at design options and did all these things. And from that, built a structure and a design system that let us build additional pages. And so we wrote the copy and did all that. And then we plugged, had with the design system, grab the copy and build page. And then I would iterate with Claude on this flat HTML document just in a chat conversation. So we got an image issue here, but you can see, this is pretty darn good. I'm pretty happy with this. We got some nice icons there. Request a quote button. Yeah. Claude even took the SVG of their logo that we created from a flat PNG and made the fan in the middle rotate. Isn't that cool? Yeah, Jamie. So what if the client wants revisions? Well, you just open up Claude and you say, hey, change this around to this, and it'll re-render the HTML. It's pretty awesome. So we'll take this and we'll build it out into the page builder. But this is what we show the client and what the client approves. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Now, what I will tell you is getting to that point took me several months. And whatever hair I had left on my head was probably gone at that point, because it was really frustrating trying to figure out what this process is. I put many, many, many hours into it, but it's finally paying off. Generic AI is going to build you a page that's purple and has some very significant AI design tells. Billy, this is definitely not a webinar. Like, it would take me, it took me 6 months of working a few days a week on this whole system to get it working. Yeah, it was not simple. So Claude is what I'm using to build HTML mockups. And I would just say, look, now I say all of that, I think it took me so long to do. Let me not discourage you from doing this. Okay. Because what's the payoff? The payoff is wow, what if I could automate all these pieces of my process for my agency, right? That's been my big goal for the last year. And just gradually working every time I do something, I'm building it so that it's repeatable in the inside the AI tools. And it's starting to pay off. But it's taken me longer to do things for the last several months than it normally would have. So it's been a huge investment of time to build a system that's based around AI. So, yeah, sure, there are tools like Jamie is suggesting, Lovable. It's Claude, and Lovable's powered by Claude, right? So, what you have to do is figure out what are the assumptions that Lovable as a tool is going to make about design. Because honestly, if you look at generic Lovable design, it looks like every other AI design thing that's out there. Generic Claude writes and designs the same way. So what you have to do is give Claude a lens to look through. And that's really the key to all of this. So you got to establish a design system, create some opinions around how things ought to be built, and let Claude look through that lens to build your work. So we've been documenting processes and building opinions in lots of different documents that all get digested into context before design happens. Next up in the list is Billy. So yeah, that was a long answer to a very short question. Billy says, you mentioned in the update that you are now creating flat HTML mockups. What are you using? Okay, that same question. Unless I should answer that question again, which I hope I don't have to. The answer to that question is Claude. Okay, next up is Shauna. Hey, Shauna. Maybe you answered this one and I missed it, but has enough time passed that it's safe to update to WordPress 7? Yeah. So we rolled out WordPress 7 3 weeks ago, probably. I have to check with Chris from my team. I think about 3 weeks ago, we've had no issues, zero issues whatsoever. Nobody's bumping into the AI tools. No issues. So I think you're probably very safe to do that. You'll want to mega backup. If you've got, a typical site, or especially if you have a finicky site, make sure you have a backup, update it live. Don't use some dashboard, update it live, make sure everything is fine, but it's very likely you'll have no issues whatsoever. Yeah, we didn't have any issues at all on any of the sites that we manage. I've even lost track. I don't think they've even dropped the .0.1, have they? No, we're still at 7.0. So there's been no dot release, which says, my goodness, there's no bugs in this release, which is a little weird. And I've not heard any talk of a .0.1 release. So I guess that's a good thing. So good question, Shauna. Thank you for asking. All righty, next up is Billy. Billy's question is about Open Graph. So Billy says, I did an Ahref audit as part of a trial subscription. One site I received this error noted, Open Graph URL not matching canonical. What does that mean? Okay, two concepts which confuse me, Open Graph URL and canonical URL. Can you help with my confusion? Yes, although Ahrefs does its own thing sometimes. And if anybody, I am not a regular user of Ahrefs, and if anyone is, feel free to jump in the chat as usual here. But I'll just tell you as I understand what Open Graph and Canonical are. So Canonical is where the thing actually lives, right? So that's your actual URL for the post. The Open Graph URL is the normally that is it. Did it say Open Graph image, or did it just say Open Graph URL? Because that's weird. And I'm not sure why they would not match. This is one of those weird Ahrefs things that sometimes they call things different. Open Graph URL not matching canonical. Okay, interesting. So, all right, Melanie, was that a Google answer? Because it sounds like a good one. Melanie's saying in the chat that this issue, Claude says, so it must be right. because Claude is never wrong. So they're saying that your page is telling search engines and social media the preferred URL is one thing, while telling social media that it's different. So search engine, okay. So it's telling search one thing and social the other. That's weird. Oh, so it could be like a trailing slash. So I've usually a good SEO plugin just handles this. That's what's really got me confused about this. Billy, are you using a good WordPress SEO plugin? All right, this is the URL. Okay, well, let's go there. Okay, findingqualitychildcare.ca. Let's take a look at what the Open Graph says. Well, here's your Open Graph URL. And there's your base href. Sometimes also Ahrefs make stuff up, and it has false positives. Oh, it's a Joomla site. How about that? But okay, so the reason I was asking about an SEO plugin is that oftentimes these items here, all your social cards and your OG Open Graph information, that's core WordPress often doesn't generate this for you. You need a social media plugin to do that for you. The weird, I don't know, because it would seem that what happens if you add a trailing slash? So this could be an Ahrefs thing where it could be as simple as the URL that you put into Ahrefs did not have a trailing slash like this, and the Open Graph URL does. That it could be as simple as that, which is meaningless to a person, right? It could be. I don't know what else it could be, because you're literally echoing out here and here, and your URL is the same. Do we have any Ahrefs users in here? Does it care about a trailing slash in Open Graph? That's the question I would look at. I don't think you have any issue actually at all. SEO tools are, and Ahrefs among them, famous for false positives. We actually work with an SEO professional who from time to time will get this giant chunk of copy and paste from an SEO tool that all these things are wrong, and they're just not. They're not wrong. It's false positive things that matter not. So did I see the link href? Where is that? Line 22, link href rel equals canonical. Well, that is interesting. Let's go to another page and see what that looks like. Yeah, but even so, even if this was the issue, a tool that I pay for to do SEO should, quite frankly, be smart enough to understand that trailing slashes, come on, and this means the root domain, period. Like, it is, come on. I don't know. My gut, Billy, says, don't worry about this. This is an SEO tool being persnickety. All righty, next up is Ben B. Hey, Ben. Okay. Oh my. Okay. Any tips or experience for a client to gain access to their Google business profile? The current email starts with 10 and ends at gmail.com. The client has started the retrieval process. If anyone has gotten any experience, let me know. Okay. So all I get, anytime I have Google business profile issues, I send them over to Trisha Clements at Your Biz Watchdog, because she just knows this stuff and it's easy to mess these things up. Now, what I will tell you that I've learned from Trisha over the years and in doing live streams with her around this topic, Google has a very specific process that you have to follow. And it's very important that the questions that they send you are answered specifically and correctly. And so if those questions go to the business owner and they're just, yeah, and all these questions, they may lose access to the profile. Also, some of the process also can be they're going to mail a postcard to the address with a QR code, and you have to do the QR code. But then once you start that process of validation, it's time bound. So you only have like 10 minutes to complete it. And sometimes that process is go out to the front of your business and take pictures from this angle and send a video or whatever. And it's time bound. And if you let that process time out, you got to start over again and send another postcard and wait more days and so forth. It can be a lengthy process. Melanie's just saying in the chat, they just got access for a client. It started in April. Yeah, it can take a while. So Paul is saying you had to create the video, show the nearest street sign. Yeah, and it's a time bound process. So just make sure that if the client is going to take responsibility for this, then they really do need to understand how important it is to do it quickly and in a timely fashion once they start. Yeah. So Ben, if the client thinks they're going to get access next week, set their expectations appropriately. It can take months. It is generally, maybe it'll go quickly. Who knows? And hey, Ben, this could be a great idea for you to go down and meet the client face to face. And you take the pictures and so forth. So just set expectations, Google business profiles. If they have never gotten access before or if they've lost it, it is a process to get it back, much like a domain name, right? And honestly, there ought to be a process like this that is challenging because I also don't want to lose access to a Google business profile because somebody hijacked it from me. I want there to be a good, reliable process. So my properties don't get stolen from me. So yeah, great question. Okie dokie. Next up is Melanie. I've used Loom for years. I also had a lifetime deal like I do for Droppler. I used Loom because I preferred it, but since it was bought by Atlassian, I'm going back to Droppler. Any tips on organizing it from the get-go since I'm going to move my saved videos from Loom? Oh my. Can you move? I don't know that you can move videos into Droppler. Maybe you can. I've never done that before. And I don't organize it. I have a pile of Droppler videos. There might be a better way to do it than I'm doing it, but kind of my organization strategy is make sure it's named appropriately, then I can find it later if I need to in the search. Melanie, if your use case, it depends on your use case, right? If your use case for Loom was like recording how-to videos for clients, then that needs to live over someplace besides Droppler. Or maybe they could, if you have a Vimeo account already that you're paying for, have them live there. I don't know that Droppler lets you organize. I've not even looked at it for that purpose. Oh, you can upload? Great. I just don't know if you can create folders. If you can, then the answer is pretty simple. If you can't, then naming conventions are your best friend. Jamie says Claude Cowork can do it. Can Claude you can tag well, that's pretty cool. I've just never used my Droppler that way. Very interesting. Yeah. So, yeah, replicate what you've got. That makes sense. Yeah, organized by the client and the plugin. That'd be fun. Tag it for a plugin, or you just have it all in the search title. Your keywords in your search title. All righty. Next up is Elizabeth. Oh, this sounds like fun. Okay. Who owns photos on a website? I have a client that moved her site, and now the former developer is claiming that she owns all the photos. Wow. Okay, well, it depends on what their agreement was. Uh, the client should look at their contract and their proposal to see how stock photography is addressed. If the Let's just play it out both ways. Like in my world, the client owns the stock photos. Oh, they're not stock. Okay, so the former developer went out and took the photos, like with a camera, and is claiming ownership of the photos. That is an interesting twist. Okay, so it goes to the contract. So what is the work produced? If the contract or proposal talks about this is work for hire and the client owns the intellectual property created by the developer, then they should probably also own the photos. But yeah, that's a great question. Sue, is there a contract? Yeah. So photographers, for example, if you hire a photographer, they often, and it's very standard practice for the photographer to retain ownership of the photos. And then you license the photos from the photographer. That is very standard for professional high-end photographers. And so if this wasn't covered in the contract, so the developer is not a photographer. Okay, so I'm confused. Who took the photos? Did the developer take? Okay, well, it doesn't matter if the developer is a professional photographer or not. The reason I was saying that is it's a very common practice for photographers to retain ownership. And so that if I had to guess, the developer is being petty and is, taking a typical structure of the way photographers operate and do their work. So here's what this is, the first question is, do they have a contract with this former developer? If they don't, then it's up to the developer. They'd have to sue your new client, right? And prove that they, should have some royalty or something from these photos. I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is my understanding of the situation. If they don't have a contract, good luck. If it goes to court, that it's going to be their word against their word, and it's he said, she said. Your client could say, no, they were going to throw in the photos as part of the deal. I own them. And they say, well, no, I actually took them in retained license. Do you have a signed agreement? No, there's no legal case there, as I understand it. But yeah, this is why you need a contract as a developer that spells out all the things. All right, we're a bit over time here. Does that help, Elizabeth? Look for a contract. If there's no contract, the developer probably doesn't have a leg to stand on. All of that being said, that I am not a lawyer, and you should probably talk to one if you want the actual answer. Okay. Last but not least, Karen. Hey, Karen. Karen just wanted to share this. A warning for other CW users. What are we talking about here? Oh, okay. A competing hosting company. Somebody's malware is sending false positives. So Tom was that we watch your website, check the site, he checked the whole site, and it's wrong. The site is fine. Malware has been throwing false positives a lot, even for malware, or even for 7.0. Yeah, that does happen sometimes. All right. Well, that wraps us up, folks. A lot of fun questions today. We are back next Thursday for office hours as usual. And then the following Tuesday, we'll be talking about that really super cool Rocket.net MCP. Hope you have a great weekend. I'll see you back here next Thursday for office hours here on Hosting.com's Agency Success, where we go further together.